Hello and welcome to this lecture series on the Age of Jackson. We're going to start with part 1, America in Transition. In the 1820s and the 1830s, we start to see America going through a transformation. The founding fathers are beginning to die off. They're being replaced by a whole new generation of politicians and leaders. You're starting to see population growth. The United States is going to grow exponentially. This is going to be driven by not only domestic growth, but also large amounts of immigration. Right? You're going to see a westward expansion, the filling of the Midwest, the Ohio River Valley. Right now, remember that this area to the east bank of the Mississippi is our west. Right? You're going to see massive advancements in transportation. For example, in 1804, you're going to have the first steam locomotive railway built in Germany. In 1828, Charles Carroll, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, is going to break ground on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, or more commonly known as the B&O Railroad. Right? You might be familiar with this if you've ever played the game Monopoly, or as our family likes to call it, Family Fight Night. Right? In 1807, Robert Fulton is going to invent the steamboat. By 1830, there are 200 steamships on just the Mississippi River alone. 1811, you're going to have the Cumberland Road that's going to begin connecting the Midwest to the east. Right? It's going to go from Cumberland, Maryland to Vandalia, Illinois. By 1821, there's 4,000 miles of turnpikes and toll roads completed on the East Coast, which is about equivalent to what you have just here in the DFW area today. Right? And the Erie Canal is going to be completed in 1840. Speculators are going to get involved in this, especially in the West, buying up chunks of land, expecting a human rush to that region, and then, of course, selling it back at a tremendous profit. Of course, some of this land speculation and buying on credit as a result is going to lead to one of the economic disasters of this time period, known as the Panic of 1819. The Panic of 1819 was largely driven by cheap land in the West and the land speculators that flowed in there. For example, the Harrison Land Act in Indiana allowed you to buy parcels of land in Indiana territory in allotments of 320 acres apiece. Typically, that's half a square mile, right? Typically, a square mile is 640 acres, right? You could purchase this at $2 an acre. All you had to do was put 20% down plus a $6 handling fee, and you had to pay it back in 4 years at 6% interest, right? If you defaulted on the loan, the land went back to the government for resale, right? Now, most of these federal lands were lands that had been annexed from Native Americans. The Land Act of 1804 reduced those parcels even further. The Harrison Land Act was in 1800. This Land Act of 1804 reduced it to 160 acres, so a quarter square mile, right? Again, a lot of these lands are made available through the confiscation of Native American lands, right? So more and more people are purchasing land out here, but they're doing it on credit, okay? And banks are making a lot of really bad loans. In 1819, the Second Bank of the United States begins to really get concerned about this. And so what they do is they begin to rein in what they saw was overused credit, began calling in many of their loans that they're making to these banks. This is going to cause the banks to begin to call in many of their bad loans, and just like the housing bubble that burst in the early 2000s, this land bubble is going to burst, and you're going to have an economic collapse, right? The tightening of credit causes a ripple effect. You start having state banks that begin to fail. You start seeing a reduction in physical currency, right? Making it harder and harder for landowners to make payments on their loans. More and more loans go into default. The government will respond to this. The Land Act of 1820 is going to help, at least with new purchasing, to reduce the parcel size down to 80-acre allotments and reduce the price from $2 an acre to $1.25 an acre. And to help those that are already possibly in trouble with this, the Relief Act of 1821 will actually allow owners to return some of those extra acreage back to the government without losing the entire parcel and without being foreclosed on. This is also a time period that we sometimes refer to as the first industrial revolution. There's going to be a lot of advances in manufacturing, right? You're going to see all kinds of new inventions. You're going to see the shift from the skilled craftsmen to merchant capitalists and factory owners. As a matter of fact, the skilled craftsman is going to begin to go away and be replaced with the wage earner, right, that only is doing a portion of the manufacturing process. Agriculture is going to see a lot of advancements as well. You're going to see, for example, the cotton gin invented in 1793, often credited to Eli Whitney. 1834, you're going to see Cyrus McCormick invent the mechanical reaper. In 1837, John Deere will create the steel plow. So again, you're going to see transformations in agriculture, and in fact, it's going to cause cotton to become the primary southern crop as a result of some of these inventions, and it's going to turn the southern economy literally into a one-trick pony, in that cotton will be king. King Cotton will run the southern economy. Now, of course, America is going to have a different look to it socially too, and this is going to be largely driven by the massive amount of immigration. A lot of people are going to come to America. To put this in perspective, in the 1820s, you had about 60,000 people per year immigrating to the United States. In the 1830s, that was up to 143,000 per year. By the 1840s, 600,000 per year. And by the 1850s, you had 1.7 million people per year immigrating into the United States. This is going to ultimately cause some backlash. You're going to have some of the first resentment and the first efforts anyways to begin to limit immigration. You're going to begin to see movements to begin repression of immigration in the United States. Like, for example, you're going to see nativist movements. You're going to see people say, look, we're Native Americans, we're native of here, even though, I mean, they're European, but multiple generations in America. I know it's kind of a fine line thing, right? And so we shouldn't be allowing all these new immigrants in. You're even going to have your first political party that's going to be an anti-immigration party, the Know Nothings. Well, they called themselves the American Party, but they were a secret political party that was formed in 1849. And if you were to ask, well, are you a member of the American Party? They would say, I know nothing. And so they obtained the moniker of the Know Nothing Party, right? This party is an anti-immigrant, anti-Irish, and anti-Catholic party, because that's the first group that actually is going to get targeted here, is the Irish. Catholicism was diluting the American system, diluting American Protestantism, right? And so that was causing that kind of backlash. Now, that being said, there's also attempts at reform. For example, in public education, right? You have the land set aside for school systems that were set up way back by the Northwest Ordinance and this idea of free public education. But Horace Mann, who will be the first secretary of the Massachusetts Board of Education, which was established in 1837, is going to reform the education system in their state so well that the other states are going to begin adopting it. Here's some of the reforms. This is why I like this guy. He's going to extend the academic year to 6 months. No, maybe that's not a very popular thing around here. He's going to double teacher's salary. I'd really like him. He's going to add the German concept of kindergarten to classes or to schools, right? And he's going to have schools funded through state property taxes, local property taxes, right? Ultimately, other states adopt this system, and it's going to be very successful. By 1860, the United States has the highest literacy rate in the world. 94% of the northern population and 83% of the southern white population could read and write. Finally, there's also a transition and a transformation in American politics, right? You're going to see an increase of the democratization of politics, right? You're going to see, for example, popular selection of electors. Remember, the Constitution just says each state shall appoint in such a manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives which the state may be entitled to in Congress, right? The state can decide how to select its presidential electors however it wants. In 1800, 10 of the 16 states used the state legislatures to select presidential electors. Right? By 1828, only South Carolina still used this practice. Every other state used popular vote to decide who got to choose the electors. You're going to see fewer voting restrictions. The land restriction goes away, right? This is an expansion of suffrage. Instead of suffrage being limited to white male adult landowners, now it's just white male adults. You're going to see more elective offices, like judgeships that were usually appointed will become elected offices, right? And you're going to see the first national party conventions. On September 26, 1831, the anti-Mason Party is going to hold the first ever presidential party or first party national convention, in which they're going to select William Wirt of Maryland to be their presidential candidate. So you see that America is having a greater participation by the people in its politics.